What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another video, and we're going to take a look at some CGC graded key issue Star Wars comic books today. Recent sales prices, most of them are 9.8s. I do have for Star Wars 1 some different grades so you can see the progression in price and where the sweet spot is. We talked about that in a recent video, about where the sweet spot is for some of these more expensive books. And I also got a few less expensive books, modern books, that are worth considering in the current market environment where everything seems to be on the downtrend. Star Wars seems to be kind of dead in the water in terms of the comic book prices. And which ones are good buys? Which ones are not? What's the price point and the grade to aim for? So let's go ahead and dig in. The first one is Star Wars #1, and obviously this is the biggest of the big books, and we're going to take a look at different grades. So we're going to start off with a CGC 9.2 old case style. And this one was listed for $245. The best offer that was accepted on that was $220. So if you want an affordable, lower grade key, this is probably a pretty good option. It goes up from there pretty dramatically, though. So that's what I kind of wanted to show you, is looking at the delta, the change in price going up in grade for Star Wars #1. So a 9.2 sold for $220. Here's a 9.4 old case style as well, and that one sold at an auction for $777 plus $25 shipping. So about $800 versus this one that sold for about $240 after shipping. Just going from a 9.2 to a 9.4, it's a pretty dramatic price difference. Now, if you go from a 9.4 to a 9.6, also old case style, it was a pretty minimal price difference, right? This one sold for $819. So a 9.6 versus a 9.4, you're talking a difference after shipping of $20. So if you're going to spend that much money, go ahead and go for a 9.6. Both of those were at auction, and they ended within $20 of each other. But in this case, you're getting a 9.6, which is a great grade, a near mint score, versus a 9.4 for $20 less. So clearly, there's a huge price delta going from a 9.2 to a 9.4, but from a 9.4 to a 9.6, there's not. And so I think if you're not gonna, if you don't want to spend $800, get the 9.2. But if you are willing to spend a roughly between $750 and $800, go ahead and wait for a 9.6 to come up at auction. And it's a higher grade, and you'll get a lot better investment for your money. A 9.8, so that's where the price really accelerates, and it's not for everybody. I get that. There's about 750 or so 9.8s on the census right now. This one sold in an auction for $37.49. On Comic Link, we just documented a couple that sold between $3,400 and $3,700, depending on centering, depending on the colors, depending on the bleed through on the white Star Wars logo. All of those things we talked about. So this one had a little bit of bleed through on the Star Wars logo, a little bit of an overwrap, as you can see on the left-hand side binding. That still sold for $37.49 plus sales taxes. Here was another one that had perfect centering, or pretty close to perfect centering, a little bit of an overwrap at the bottom of the book there. The white logo, the Star Wars logo, was pretty good, not really much bleed through at all. Brand new case style. This one was just graded, as you can tell by the certification number. That one was listed for $4,200. The best offer accepted on that one was $4,100. So that to me seems a little expensive. Okay, don't get me wrong. I paid pretty close to that for my copy, but my copy was, a couple of months ago when the market was maybe even a little bit stronger than it is today. So to me, wait for an auction. Try to get closer to that $3,700, if not lower. I've seen some that were 9.8 grades sell on Facebook for as low as $3,000. So it's a pretty big price difference going from Facebook or maybe Instagram on like Grail's Comics, some of those accounts that have these really big books for sale. You can avoid a lot of the eBay sales fees for the seller, and for the buyer, you avoid all of the sales taxes associated with it. But anyway, at least on eBay, $3,700 to $4,100 is the going rate for a 9.8, and then it drops off huge to for a 9.6 grade for about $820. So just factor all that into your price budget. Some other keys. This one was a drastic overpay, and I assume it's a legitimate sale because it's My Comic Shop, which is a pretty big brand, a pretty big store. This buyer could have bought it direct on My Comic Shop, not used eBay, and saved $400 or more. This is Star Wars #2, the first full appearance of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Han Solo, and Chewbacca. So another key, and this one sold for $43.50, which is a huge overpay, given that on Comic Link last month, one sold for about $2,800. Just try to factor that in. If you see something listed by My Comic Shop on eBay, go direct to My Comic Shop. You can save 10%, plus you don't have to pay eBay sales taxes. So, this buyer probably could have got this book for $800 less or more if they had just gone to My Comic Shop instead of buying it on eBay. But anyway, I assume it's a legit sale. It says it sold on eBay for $43.50 for Star Wars #2. Again, aim for closer to $2,500 to $2,800 for that one. It's still a great book. It's one I definitely want to get, but not at that price point. That's a way too high of a price. Some other vintage Marvel run keys. Secondary key, Star Wars #8, the first appearance of Jackson. This one sold for $158.50. Another good buy right now. This one was going for $600 during the pandemic. Now it's $158. That's a bargain. Great cover too, by the way, with kind of a stylized 1970s Chewbacca and Han Solo, as well as Jackson there on the right. Again, it's not a major character, but for Star Wars fans, you know who Jackson is, and it's a great book to have. I would pay that price all day long versus the $600 number that it was going for back in 2020. Here's one in my collection. This is Star Wars #21, the first original Darth Vader solo story, Shadow of a Dark Lord. And this one's held up pretty well. This one actually sold for higher than what I paid for mine about a year ago. This one sold for $350 plus $7 shipping. I think in an auction, this thing would probably go in the $250 range. My personal opinion on that. I paid $325 about a year ago. $350 seems like an overpay just given that everything else is down, but it's still a great cover and not too many of them on the census relative to some of the others. Here is Star Wars #41, the continuing adaptation of The Empire Strikes Back. This is the first cameo appearance of Yoda in comics. Great cover. This one sold for $197.50, and I had this in a what to buy video, and I said it would probably go for around $200, and that was dead on the money. $197.50 plus $15 shipping. That was the direct edition. For the newsstand, I would think at least $250 on that one. Next up, we've got Star Wars 42, the first Boba Fett appearance. This one was a buy it now situation, make an offer. It was listed for $1,700, and the best offer that was accepted was $1,565. I've seen this book sell for as little as $1,100, so don't overpay right now for Star Wars keys. All of them are down, and even at $1,565, I'm not saying it's the worst deal in the world, but I think in an auction, this book would probably go for $1,100 to $1,200. I know on Comic Link it wouldn't sell anywhere near $1,565. So just wait for one to come up at an auction or on Comic Link, Comic Connect, Heritage. I think you can do a lot better than $1,500 plus for this one in a direct edition. Now a newsstand, I could see $1,500. That would probably be worth it. But for the direct edition, just be patient. There's plenty of these on the census. You can probably pick this up in that, like I said, $1,100 to $1,200 range. Next up, Star Wars 43. This was a newsstand edition. First appearance of Lando, another secondary key. This one's come back down to earth a little bit. But, for a little while there, after Donald Glover was announced to be directing and writing either a movie or a show for Disney Plus, this one shot up in the newsstand to like $375. This one was the newsstand, and it sold for $222, which is a bargain. I would pay that all day long. That was a really great price for a secondary key. Great cover. Betrayal at Bestman. I've got this one in the direct edition, but to me, to get this in a newsstand for $222, steal of a deal. Congratulations if you happen to be the one to pick that one up. Now I got Heir to the Empire, #1, the first appearance of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Obviously, the Ahsoka series has come and gone. So what has the book done here lately? Well, I've got the direct edition as well as the newsstand. This direct edition sold for $712, which is about right. It was going for $800 to $900. The market's a little softer right now. $700 seems to be about the right price for the direct edition. This newsstand edition is one I had in my what to buy video. And, there's about 80 of them on the census. And this one sold for $14.13, which is also down relative to the one that sold on Comic Link about a month and a half ago for about $18.50. So $14.13, that number seems really palatable for the newsstand edition for Heir to the Empire #1 in the current market environment. So I would pay that all day long personally, and certainly a book that if it stays in that price point, which I think it will, or drop, I would definitely consider it. So maybe you wait, another 6 months or so. Everyone's forgotten about Ahsoka, and this book is more like $1,100 or $1,200. Who knows? If it is, you can rest assured that I'm going to be making a play at one, because I would love to have that one in a newsstand. Next up, Clone Wars 1, another book that has come down. And if you remember, about a month ago, I said, don't pay $1,800 right now. It's going to come back down to $1,600 or less. And sure enough, this one sold in an auction. This is the direct edition of Clone Wars 1. And this one sold for $1,400. So it's come off even more than what I expected. And will this book drop even further? Probably. It probably will, just because Ahsoka's come and gone now on Disney Plus. And people have moved on to bigger and better things, or at least other things. To me, having Clone Wars 1 in that $1,400 range, that's a number I'd live with. I certainly paid more for mine. But I think if you can get it in that price point or lower, as the kind of market moves on to other books, I would definitely look for one in a stealth auction. Maybe you get it closer to $1,200 or less. But $1,400 in the current market environment, that's a lot better than $1,800, which is where it was six weeks ago. So congrats if you bought that one. Kanan #6 is Dead in the Water. This is another book that, while there are a lot of them on the census because it's a modern book, I would still consider it. It's a fantastic cover. It's the first full appearance of the Rebels team. We know that the Rebels are going to have more appearances in Disney Plus content. And while the market doesn't really react to that, it's still, if you're a Rebels fan like I am, it's just one of those awesome covers. And the fact that it's their first full appearance, I mean, you can't beat it. Era Syndulla, Sabine Wren, you got Ezra Bridger there. You got Kanan, which is not his first appearance. His first full appearance is really Kanan, the Last Padawan #1. Zeb Aurelius, you're going to see more of him. We saw him briefly in season 3 of The Mandalorian. And Chopper, this is a great book. And to get it for $217.50 in an auction like this buyer did, that is a no-brainer. This was selling for $375 just a month ago. So great buy on that one if you happen to pick that one up. Solo adaptation #1. Now, I'm going to talk about a few other modern books here that are plentiful on the census. And this one was the 1:25 ratio variant. There is also another 1:50 ratio variant that shows Han Solo and Chewbacca fighting in the pit, the fighting pit that we saw in the movie. To me, this is a better cover. I like this cover better, but it is a lower ratio variant. And $91, can't beat that. That's a good price right there. But I got some other books I'm going to show you in a second that I think are a better buy, that are around $100 or less. But to me, that's not a bad buy. I don't think they're going to do anything else with it. It is kind of, the first appearance of the young Lando. So maybe something happens with this book and it sees a little spike if the new Lando series or movie does well. But it's not a bad book. I mean, I've got the standard cover A for Solo adaptation #1. I would rather have Rogue One adaptation #1 personally. That's just my personal opinion, because that's the first appearance of Cassian Andor, and the Cassian Andor show was an absolute hit in my opinion. And obviously there's going to be a season 2 at some point. So, but $91 is, there's worse ways to spend $91. To me, I'd spend a little bit more money and get this book. This is the 1:10 ratio variant for Thrawn #1, The Origin of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Great cover. This is kind of his Rebels kind of cartoon style. It's the 1:10 ratio variant. And this one sold for $158.50. It's kind of held up pretty well. For a while there, it was like $250, $260. It's been slowly creeping down, but it seems to have hit kind of a price floor at around $150. And given that the standard cover A sells for about this price, $130, $140, go ahead and spend up just $10 or $20 more and get the 1:10 ratio variant for, $160 plus shipping. So that's a number I'd pay all day long. I wouldn't mind having that book at $160. Next up, here's, if you're going to spend $50 or $100, this is not a bad one either. This is the Force Awakens adaptation #1, but this is the Neil Adams cover. And obviously Neil Adams just passed away, but this is the first appearance of Rey and, some of the other Force Awakens. I can't remember his name. I don't know what it is. I have like a memory blank here. but you know, Ben Solo, I'll go with that. But anyway, this cover, to me, for all of the different covers for Force Awakens adaptation #1, is by far the best, and it's a Neil Adams book. I mean, you know, Neil Adams was just an incredible artist, and I love this book. And $50? Are you kidding me? That's a great deal. This was going for $150 like 4 months ago. So if you're going to spend $50, that's a really good way to do it, in my opinion. Next up, we've got some autographed items before we dig into one more that I wanted to show you that I think is a good buy right now. And just from putting this tab of items together to actually starting to filming, the other 2 copies sold. So stay tuned for that at the end. But I've got some autograph books I wanted to show you. Clone Wars #2. This was signed by Ashley Eckstein and Matt Lanter, who played Anakin. And what an awesome book. I mean, to have double signatures from Clone Wars voice actors. This one sold for $355 in an auction. I'm not really into autograph books, but if you are, that's not a bad price to pay to get a double autograph book, CGC 9.8. And it's also the second appearance of Ahsoka, by the way, in comics. Clone Wars #1, obviously, but Clone Wars #2, to get Ahsoka's second appearance plus 2 autographs from the show. That's a pretty good way to spend that money. Ewan McGregor signed book, Obi-Wan #1. This one sold for $500, as you'd expect. Ewan McGregor signed comics in a CGC 9.8 yellow series. You're going to be paying a lot of money for them. They go for a lot of money. And I like how the signature is a bright blue. It really pops on that book. Looks great with the lightsaber being blue. And he doesn't have the greatest signature in the world. It's a bunch of scribbles, but you know it's legit because it's for the yellow series CGC 9.8s. It has to be witness signature by a CGC employee, so or a representative. So to get that one sold for $500. It's a lot of money, but if you're into autographs, that's not a bad way to do it. Here's a Katie Sackhoff signed Dr. Aphra #19. This is the first cover appearance of Bo-Katan in comics, and signed by Katie Sackhoff, and it says, "This is the way." Pretty awesome book. This seller has 2 still available. One of them did sell at $450. A little expensive. I've seen them sell in auctions for about $300. So you can make an offer as well on that one. Next up, I've got the book that if you're going to buy any High Republic books, this is probably a good one to get. High Republic Adventures Annual 2021. Now, this is the most expensive variant. This is the IDW online exclusive, and it's very pricey. I found several different data points for a 9.8 for this book that sold at $320. This is the first appearance of Bel Zettifar, his Charhound Ember, Loden Greatstorm, and I forgot Indira Stokes is the other one. So there's like 4 or 5 different big first appearances. And as you can see there on the cover, it's the online exclusive that was only available on IDW's website. It sold out in like 30 seconds. It was crazy. So this is the most exclusive variant, but for $320, I would rather have 3 of this book. And this is the Things from Another World variant of the same book. So, and it also features Bel Zettifar and his Charhound Ember on the cover. This is a awesome cover. I love this cover. This is by far my favorite cover for High Republic Adventures Annual #1. It was the Things from Another World edition. Now, what makes this one kind of tough to find is because when it was originally for sale, they only offered it in a CBCS 9.8 pre-order or raw. And so a lot of people bought the CBCS 9.8 pre-order, and it sold out immediately. And so really the only option was a raw book. So anyone who bought the raw books then had to send it into CGC. So if you're into CGC books, I'm not really into CBCS books. If you're into CGC 9.8s, you had to rely on the people who were actually managed to get the 9.8 of this book. Like I did. I got 2 raws. I sent them off to get pressed and clean, and both of them got the 9.8, luckily. This seller sold them for $100, and there were 2 still available when I put this list together. And I sent them out as a buy it now alert to my Patreons, like a Patreon exclusive, and they sold immediately. So I assume that 2 Patreons bought it. I know Justin M., who's a big Patreon supporter and a good buddy of mine, he texted me and he said, yeah, I bought one. And I assume the other one also got bought, but they were listed for $100 plus $11.45 shipping. Great deal. And so now they're all gone, but just look for more of them. I'm sure more of them will pop up on eBay. But in my opinion, I would rather have 3 of this book at $100 a pop versus one of the IDW exclusives. Now, is there going to be more of these in a 9.8 or more of the Things from Another World in a 9.8? Probably will be versus the IDW exclusive. This was a very exclusive, very limited print run. But to me, this is a harder cover to get at 9.8 because of the dark edges. So you might be wrong on that. You might find that in general, once everything settles out a year from now or 2 years from now, in terms of the 9.8 ratio, there are fewer of these in a 9.8 versus the IDW exclusive. And then this one slowly kind of trickles up in price point. But $100 plus shipping for that one, that was a bargain of a deal in my opinion. So anyway, just some ideas to keep an eye out for on eBay and elsewhere. And, just to give you some general prices as to where we are right now in kind of a down market for Star Wars comics in CGC grades. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.